Royal Bahamian Police got Lynette's Apple Watch. Originally, there was a story that broke that it might have been on a beach. That was dispelled. It was not. They got it off.
Nobody expected the search warrant to say what it said. That is the truth of where this case stands right now. Not what the rumors say. Not what the speculation says. What the actual legal document says. What CBS News confirmed. What the Royal Bahamas Police Force executed on a 46-foot sailboat anchored quietly in Aunt Pat's Bay on Elbow Key in the Abacos. A sailboat named the Soulmate. And what investigators pulled off that boat is the reason this case is no longer a missing person story. It is something else entirely now. Stay with me because every single detail in what you are about to hear comes from confirmed reporting. CBS News, CNN, NBC News, ABC News, Newsweek, News Nation, and the Drop Dead Serious podcast with Ashley Banfield. No speculation. No invented details. Just the evidence, the timeline, and the questions that the evidence is now forcing this investigation to answer. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She and her husband Brian Hooker had been living aboard their sailboat for years. The Soulmate was a Morgan 461, bought in Rockport, Texas, a 1980 charter boat that had once sailed the Virgin Islands. For Brian and Lynette, it was not just a vessel. It was a home. They had crossed oceans on it. They had built a life around it. And on the evening of April 4th, 2026, they left a dock in Hopetown in their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy, headed toward the Soulmate, which was anchored roughly 2.5 miles away in Aunt Pat's Bay on Elbow Key. That is the last verified moment both of them were seen together. What happened between that moment and 4 in the morning on April 5th when Brian Hooker walked out of the bush and into the Marsh Harbor boatyard is the question at the center of everything. Brian's account has never changed. He says Lynette went overboard. He says it happened during a wind that picked up suddenly, around 20 knots, and she bounced off the dinghy and went into the water. He says she took the engine safety lanyard with her when she fell, which shut off the engine. He says the sun was setting. He says he lost sight of her. He says the dinghy drifted 4 miles in the direction of Marsh Harbor. He says he paddled and eventually traversed through bush to reach the boatyard. He says the Soulmate, the 46-foot sailboat sitting 2.5 miles away in Aunt Pat's Bay, was never reached that night. Lynette never made it back to the boat. That is his account. That is what he told Fire and Rescue. That is what he told the Royal Bahamas Police Force during 5 full days of questioning. That is what his attorneys confirmed after his release without charges. The Soulmate was untouched, unreached, empty. That is the fixed point of his story. And that fixed point is exactly what the search warrant now challenges. To understand why the warrant matters, you need to understand what a search warrant actually represents in legal terms. Investigators do not obtain search warrants because they have nothing better to do. To get a magistrate to sign off on a search warrant, investigators have to demonstrate probable cause. They have to present enough credible information to convince a judicial officer that evidence relevant to a crime is likely present in the location they want to search. That threshold is not casual. That threshold is a legal determination. By the time the Royal Bahamas Police Force executed the search warrant on the Soulmate, they had already detained Brian Hooker for 5 days. They had already questioned him. They had already reviewed whatever initial information they had gathered. And after all of that, they still went to a magistrate and said there is probable cause to believe that evidence of a crime exists on that boat. The magistrate agreed. The warrant was signed. The Soulmate was boarded. And what investigators removed from that vessel is documented in a warrant that CBS News reviewed and confirmed. A digital video recorder, digital tablets, cell phone-related equipment and accessories. Read that list again and think about what each of those items represents in the context of a forensic investigation. These are not items you remove from a boat during a standard welfare check. These are the specific categories of devices that law enforcement seizes when they believe those devices recorded something, stored something, transmitted something, or connected to something that is relevant to understanding what happened to a person. And the warrant language, confirmed by CBS News, described the seized items as potentially being material evidence and/or containing material evidence related to a missing person causing bodily harm. 3 things in that language demand attention. First, material evidence. Not peripheral. Not background. Material. That legal standard means directly relevant and significant. Investigators were not casting a wide net hoping to get lucky. They believed those specific devices would tell them something specific that they needed to know. Second, causing bodily harm. The warrant does not say related to a missing person. It says related to a missing person causing bodily harm. That is a deliberate legal framing. Every word in a search warrant carries weight. That phrase points in a direction. It points toward a conclusion that the disappearance was not an accident. Third, the devices are under active review. Not queued for future processing. Not filed away pending further inquiry. Under active review right now. The moment that warrant was executed, a clock stopped ticking for anyone who hoped that what those devices contain would remain inaccessible. Start with a digital video recorder. A DVR on a blue water sailboat like the Soulmate would typically be connected to security cameras. Many liveaboard cruising vessels carry cameras both inside and outside, for navigation, for safety, for security. A DVR does not need someone to press record. It records continuously, on a schedule, or when triggered by motion. It logs every recording session by timestamp. That means investigators who now have that DVR in their possession have access to every recording made on the Soulmate, including any recordings made during the hours when Brian Hooker says the boat was completely empty. If a camera captured footage of anyone boarding that vessel on the night of April 4th, that footage exists on that recorder. And if that footage was deleted, that deletion is not the end of the story. Forensic tools used by law enforcement agencies around the world, industry standard platforms like Celebrite and UFED, can recover deleted files. They can reconstruct data. They can pull timestamps from material that the user believed was gone. Deletion is not destruction. Not to a forensic technician with the right equipment. The DVR is one piece. The tablets are the second. The Soulmate was equipped with Starlink, a satellite internet system confirmed by Ashley Banfield on Drop Dead Serious. A tablet connected to the Soulmate Starlink system would have left a connection history. Every time a device joins a network, a log is created. On the device itself, on the router, and on the provider's servers. Starlink as a satellite internet provider maintains connection logs that show which device connected, when it connected, and from what position. If a tablet that lived on the Soulmate was active during the hours when Brian says he was paddling alone in the darkness, if it woke up, connected, downloaded anything, received a message, that activity is logged. The cell phone related equipment and accessories round out the picture. The warrant language here is deliberately broad, which is standard practice. It covers charging cables, phone mounts, SIM card holders, Bluetooth devices, accessories paired to a phone. Each of these items has its own forensic story. A Bluetooth device logs which phones have paired with it. A SIM card records network pings. A phone mount may hold forensic evidence of which device occupied it and when. Brian told Sailing Friends in a recorded phone call obtained by CBS News that he did have his phone on him during the incident. He said it did not work because it was only able to make calls with Wi-Fi. That statement has its own forensic implications. Phone activity, or the absence of it, during a specific time window is itself a data point. Investigators reviewing carrier records, app logs, and any device that Brian's phone might have connected to will have a picture of exactly what that phone was doing during those hours. Whether it was dormant, whether it attempted connections, whether it logged any activity at all. All of that is recoverable. Former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer said it plainly to Newsweek. They need to look at his Google searches. And then she said the line that captures what is truly at stake in this investigation. If he made any Google searches, that will be where the case is made. She was not speaking hypothetically. She was drawing on federal investigation experience to explain that digital search history in cases like this has broken open prosecutions before. Google does not only store search history on your device. Google stores it on their servers. Law enforcement with a valid legal request can access what was searched from a specific account even if the device was wiped, even if the history was cleared, even if the phone itself is at the bottom of the ocean. The devices were seized. The devices are being reviewed. And the question that drives this entire investigation, whether what those devices recorded and transmitted on the night of April 4th matches what Brian Hooker says happened, is currently being answered. Now we get to the watch. Lynette Hooker was photographed on April 4th, 2026, the last day she was seen alive, wearing her Apple Watch. Ashley Banfield on Drop Dead Serious confirmed the existence of this photo and the detail within it. Lynette, in that final image, had her Apple Watch on her wrist. Apple Watches are paired to an iPhone. The two devices are linked. They communicate constantly and automatically. Step counts, heart rate, Notifications. Location pings. When both devices are within range of an internet connection, both sync through that connection. The soulmate had Starlink. Starlink is a satellite internet system. It does not depend on being near a cell tower. It functions in open ocean. It functions at night. It functions whether anyone is consciously using it or not. Because paired devices connect automatically when they come within range. Carly Ellsworth, Lynette's daughter, confirmed the Apple Watch was connected to her mother's iPhone. And then came the development that changed everything. Banfield confirmed that the Royal Bahamas Police Force got Lynette's Apple Watch. There was initially a story that it might have been found on a beach. That was dispelled. It was not on a beach. It was found on the Soulmate. When investigators boarded that vessel and executed the search warrant, they collected a watch from that boat. Brian Hooker says Lynette Hooker never made it back to the Soulmate. Lynette Hooker was photographed wearing her Apple Watch on the last day anyone saw her. A watch was found on the Soulmate when police boarded it. These three facts exist simultaneously. The watch could be a different watch. A backup. A spare. Something belonging to Brian. That possibility must be acknowledged. But here is the thing. If it is an Apple Watch, the serial number is registered to an account. The question of which watch it is, whose watch it is not a mystery requiring guesswork. The device itself can answer it. And if that watch is Lynette's, then the question it raises is one that Brian Hooker's account cannot currently answer. How did it get there? If Lynette never reached the Soulmate, how is her watch on the Soulmate? An Apple Watch is not just a watch. It is a data device. It logs heart rate continuously. It logs movement. It logs when it was last active. It logs when the wearer's heart rate stopped registering. That final timestamp, the last moment recorded by an Apple Watch's health sensors if that watch belonged to Lynette Hooker, would be among the most significant pieces of evidence in this entire case. Apple Watch health data records passively. It stores locally and syncs to the paired iPhone through iCloud when a connection is available. Investigators who have the watch, who have the cell phone-related equipment from the Soulmate, and who have access to Carly's cooperation in accessing associated accounts are in a position to know exactly what that watch recorded. The data does not lie. The data does not have a motive. The data does not change its story under questioning. There is something else. Something that does not come from a device at all. It comes from human beings. Ashley Banfield reported on Drop Dead Sirius that multiple witnesses reportedly saw flares being fired from the Soulmate itself. Not from a dinghy adrift in open. From the anchored yacht. The 46-foot sailboat sitting in Aunt Pat's Bay. The boat Brian says was never reached before 9 in the evening on April 4th. Brian left the Abaco in dock at approximately 7:30 in the evening. The Soulmate was roughly 2.5 miles away. If flares were fired from the Soulmate specifically before 9 in the evening, not from a drifting dinghy but from the anchored yacht, and multiple witnesses observed them, the question of whether the Soulmate was reached that night goes far beyond Brian Hooker's word. Brian himself told sailing friends Blaine and Mon Stevenson in a recorded phone call obtained by CBS News that he was adrift in the dinghy, saw passing boats, and used his phone flashlight and flares to try to get their attention. No one stopped. That is Brian's own version. Flares fired from the dinghy. Not from the Soulmate. The contradiction between what Brian describes and what witnesses reportedly observed is a contradiction investigators are now examining with every tool available to them. Banfield also confirmed new surveillance footage from Lubber's quarters, a position across the Sea of Abaco with a sightline toward Elbow Key and the Soulmate's anchorage area. That footage captures a small dark object visible near the boats in the relevant time frame, raising questions about the dinghy's route and what Brian's timeline can and cannot account for. Think through the geography carefully. The Soulmate was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay on Elbow Key. Brian says he and Lynette left the Abaco in dock in Hopetown around 7:30 in the evening in their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. The Soulmate was roughly 2.5 miles away. He says Lynette went overboard before they reached it. He says the dinghy drifted 4 miles in the direction of Marsh Harbor. That drift was confirmed by Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. He traversed through bush to reach the Marsh Harbor boatyard at around 4 in the morning. If that account is accurate, no one boarded the Soulmate that night. Lynette never reached it. Brian never reached it. The boat was empty through the entire night. So how is there a watch on a boat that no one boarded? And how did multiple witnesses see flares coming from a boat that was supposed to be empty? Investigators do not write warrant language carelessly. The phrase causing bodily harm is not there by accident. It points in a specific investigative direction. One that does not assume the disappearance was an accident. One that treats what happened to Lynette Hooker as something that was done to her. The Soulmate is not a weekend boat that sat unused between outings. It was a home. 2 people lived on it continuously. That means every device that connected to its Starlink system has an extensive, detailed history of connection events organized by timestamp, device identity, and duration. When investigators pull those logs, they are not reading a sparse record. They are reading something comprehensive. They will know with precision which device is connected to that network on which days, at which times, for how long. That level of detail means that any connection event occurring on the night of April 4th, during the hours when Brian says the boat was empty, will not look like background noise. It will look like exactly what it is. Activity on a boat that was supposed to have no one aboard. That kind of anomaly does not require interpretation. It either exists or it does not. Carly Ellsworth is 28 years old. Her mother has been missing since April 4th. She traveled to the Bahamas herself with her boyfriend Steve Hansen and walked the route her mother was supposed to have traveled. She stood on the Soulmate. She told News Nation's Jesse Weber Live that going on the boat hit her really hard and that it felt almost eerie. She retrieved several of her mother's personal items. A headband. The necklace with the L charm that Lynette always wore. A picture frame she had made for her. She came home wearing that necklace on the flight back. She did not come away with answers. What she has said consistently across every interview is that she does not believe her stepfather's account. She does not believe her mother, an experienced sailor with more than a decade at sea, an experienced swimmer, simply fell overboard from an 8-foot dinghy. She has questioned the detail of the engine safety lanyard. Brian was always the one who drove the dinghy, she told CBS News. So why would Lynette have been holding the lanyard? The story, in Carly's own words, just does not make sense. She has pointed to specific physical and logical details in every interview. She has pointed to her mother's experience. More than a decade at sea. A strong swimmer who grew up near lakes. She has pointed to the timeline, to the geography, to the gaps she has been unable to reconcile with what she has been told. Lynette's mother, Dolene Hamlet, told Ashley Banfield on Drop Dead Serious that she had for a long time feared a call like the one she eventually received. She said of her daughter and Brian that she believed they loved each other but that they were not good for each other. Dolene Hamlet told the Associated Press when Brian was first arrested that she was glad to hear it, but that she wanted to hear more from her son-in-law about how her daughter disappeared. She said she had not heard from him in almost 2 days at that point. She was on a 6-hour drive. Back from the Bahamian consulate in Miami, where she had just secured a passport so she could fly to the Bahamas. A grandmother trying to get to the place her daughter vanished. Before Lynette disappeared, she had, according to Banfield's reporting from Dolene Hamlet, purchased a one-way ticket home. She had in late January 2024 told a friend in messages obtained by CBS News that she and Brian had decided to call it quits and that she was not going back. By late February 2024, the couple had reconciled. They were back on the water together. They were back on the Soulmate together. Brian Hooker is back in the United States. He is represented by 2 attorneys. Tell Butler in the Bahamas and Michigan-based attorney Crystal Marie Hauer. He has not been charged. He has not been arrested in connection with any U.S. proceedings. The Royal Bahamas Police Force retains jurisdiction. Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles confirmed, publicly after Brian's release, that he remained a suspect in the investigation. Release without charges is not exoneration. It is a decision made within a legal time frame. The investigation continues regardless. Crystal Marie Hauer, speaking to ABC News, said there is absolutely no evidence to support any of the allegations. She asked the public to give Brian the benefit of the doubt. Brian himself told an associate that Lynette is his life and that they have been together almost half his life and that he means to keep looking. He told ABC News that his one job was to look out for her and that it had not happened. The dual investigation structure matters here. The Royal Bahamas Police Force is the primary investigating authority. But the U.S. Coast Guard has opened its own criminal investigation, confirmed to NBC News. The Coast Guard Investigative Service operates as a federal law enforcement agency. When CGIS opens a criminal investigation, it carries subpoena power. It has the authority to obtain records from US-based technology companies. It works in coordination with other federal agencies and US federal prosecutors. That means the Starlink logs, the Google account records, the Apple iCloud data including Apple Watch health logs, the carrier records, All of it is accessible to GIS through legal process, even if those records were never physically on the soulmate itself. The devices seized from the boat are the entry point. The US legal process is the mechanism that reaches what those devices connected to. Former FBI agent Coffin Daffer flagged the urgency of this directly to Newsweek. Once Brian left the Bahamas, she said he would be very difficult to get back into jurisdiction if investigators later developed enough evidence to charge him. Extradition from the United States to the Bahamas is legally possible. The two countries maintain an extradition treaty, but it is a complex and time-consuming process